Saints in cinema, all right? The missed opportunity of the early 20th century. This is a topic that spawned from a research paper I wrote many years ago. Let's begin. The church should teach Hollywood by example rather than by precept. An observation made by film critic Alva Johnson way back in 1931, the church and Hollywood, saints in cinema. What's the earliest history between these two cultural forces in America? During my research, I uncovered what I call the forgotten story of cinema's earliest seed. Although heavyweights like Louis Lumiere, Thomas Edison, William Dixon are generally credited with the creation of development, of operational stock cameras, it was actually a New Jersey clergyman who beat them all to the punch. His name is Reverend Hannibal Goodwin, 1877. This guy invents and patents the flexible celluloid film process that made motion pictures possible. His inspiration fueled by a simple desire to enhance Bible teachings. Flash forward to the mid-20s, it's evident, gang, the church had been utilizing the power of cinema for the gospel's sake with startling success. 1911, Photography magazine even reported films were a powerful way of uplifting humanity and becoming a new enemy of Satan. The amount of films produced and or exhibited by both Catholic and Protestant churches is staggering. At the height of the church movement, the local church became such a prominent site of exhibition that neighboring theater managers were complaining and arguing, churches, they're taking away our businesses. The film projector becoming a key piece of, I think you're one slide ahead there, James, becoming a key piece of necessary church equipment as a janitor, an organ, a pews of oak. The church was lifting up this early new medium at all levels of production and exhibition. In 1919, Variety magazine announced the Methodists had appropriated $300,000 to make a motion picture enterprise in the Holy Land, 10 films, $30,000 each. Movie missionaries were all the rage for Methodists, right? 1920 hits. Eastman Kodak gives 2,000 projectors to Presbyterian churches. Organizations like the Christian Herald magazine were primed to produce religious products. Literary Digest suggested the church was, quote, wrestling another weapon from the devil and converting it to its own purpose. And so it did. The church, friends, was on the move in the Roaring '20s. But then something terrible happened. While the church was busy building its staircase between heaven and earth with celluloid film, beginning in the early 1930s through the end of the 40s, the church made no outstanding pictures. History records several factors for us. Can you guess any of them? Well, I wanted to find out. I wanted to find out what caused this sudden change inside the church and what lessons can be learned from this odd twist in history. So one factor for the drop-off can be linked to, believe it or not, religious resistance inside the church. Another issue that was big was the inadequate finances during the Great Depression era, which makes sense. The third, though, stemmed from the second. That was the emergence of a new medium, radio. Ministers and evangelist organizations had found a new friend in the sonic world of the airwaves. It was cheaper. It was a more efficient medium through which to present a logocentric sermon of salvation that appealed more to the abstract mind than the image-based counterpart of film. Speaking of audio, films were now becoming what? Talkies, right? Which meant sound. So consequently, churches would have to incur additional exhibition expenses, wiring their sanctuaries, wiring their fellowship halls with speakers and early sound systems. Well, many pastors, friends, were simply not willing to do that. However, the church community knew very well the growing power of cinema, both for good and for evil. So what did the church primarily do? Well, my research for the answer led to something called the Code. What's the Code? It's the father of a system where we get today's PG-13, and R-rated film ratings. But under the hood of what at first appeared to be the church taking a moral stand against the growing sensualities of American culture may have been a tragic mistake. I submit to you, friends, that after benching itself to the cinematic sidelines, the church seemed to choose critique and censorship over creativity and screenplays. And it did it with the fervor of 1,000 Pharisees. It all began with something called, like we said, the code, or more commonly, the production code, okay? This is a set of moral guidelines that applied to U.S. pictures. It was more well known as the Hays Code, after Will Hays, who was the president of the Motion Pictures Producers and Distributors Association from 22 to 45. Now, in 34, there was an amendment to the code. It established the PCA, the Production Code Administration. It required all U.S. films now to receive a certificate of approval before being released into theaters. The PCA was run by a staunch Catholic named Joe Breen. More about him in just a minute. But the presence of the PCA raised the key thesis statement for that paper I was working on. Here it is. Did the church's decision to place its energies and trust behind the Production Code Administration divert its attention from producing more biblically based and Christian-themed films for mainstream consumption from 34 to 52? It's a tragic theory potentially, and perhaps a black mark on us, the church, that requires careful investigation. I say this because we may have an opportunity here for today's Christian filmmakers, today's independent filmmakers, to learn from history and therefore not repeat it. Back to Joe Breen now, how he ran the PCA for those 18 years from 1934 to 1952. Funding Breen's PCA bureaucracy was a scale, right, of sliding fees that increase each year. In general, the price for code certification ranged from $84 to $3,000. Bigger the film budget, well, the bigger the PCA fee. Breen's office annually vetted approximately 3,500 examples of potential story material from books, plays, short stories, magazines submitted by the MPAA. So it can be surmised the PCA took in easily each year